I recently banned a theist from my channel for intellectual dishonesty. I do not do this sort of thing lightly, and usually reserve it for out-and-out trolls, but this particular theist might as well have been trolling, given how little she was actually contributing to the intellectual discourse, and despite repeated warnings over multiple days, she did not change her behavior one iota, and that reduced the conversation to did not, did too, did not, did too, and that I simply won't have, not on my channel. So let's lay down a few guidelines for intellectual honesty here, shall we? Number 1, very important, let your opponent define their own position. This chick had decided that atheism means explicit atheism, that you have to specifically say that there is no God to qualify. Bullshit. Atheism is the lack of a belief in a God, and lacking belief can come from many different sources, including ignorance of the God concept, or from having weighed the evidence and found it lacking, or from despising religion and thus rejecting it, or a host of other reasons. A theist telling an atheist what atheism must be, that's essentially a straw man argument. It's saying, here's what I say you believe, now defend it. That's intellectually dishonest. Number 2. Don't avoid direct questions. When asked to defend her position, the theist chick ducked and dodged and weaved and struck back with her own questions, but never actually defended her side despite repeated warnings to do so. That's intellectually dishonest. Number 3. Be amenable to logic and evidence. If you won't change your position, even when presented with contrary evidence, like the etymology of the word atheism, for example, then all you've done is presented your side and then stuck your fingers in your ears until people either agree or go away. This is intellectually dishonest as well. If you won't change your mind when you're proved wrong, then you're just a troll, frankly. Number 4. Know what you're debating. The existence of anything is a scientific question, not a philosophical one. Empirical scientific evidence proves that cars exist, that clouds exist, or that DNA exists. And if there is a God, and that God has ever interfered in this universe, which would leave empirical traces, then God's existence is a scientific question as well. To say otherwise is intellectually dishonest. Philosophy can quote-unquote prove that things exist, even when science has proved them wrong. Existence is not a worldview, it's an empirical fact. If you can't meet these very basic standards of intellectual debate and discourse, you're simply wasting everybody's time and displaying to the world how dishonest you are. And frankly, I have no time for people like that. Of course, these theists like to try to paint us with the same brush, but come on! Speak up, atheists. If you're like me and someone presented you with scientific proof of a divine being, the kind of proof that would hold up against critical and empirical scrutiny, you'd change your mind, wouldn't you? No guarantees that divine being would get our loyalty if he, she, it, or they turned out to be a real jerkwad. But we'd admit its existence, wouldn't we? I would. But no such proof is forthcoming, and when we don't change our minds in the face of emotional blackmail or the namby-pamby whining about differing worldviews, we get called intolerant or dishonest ourselves. Bullshit. We just don't play pretend and then assume that it's real.